football fans, get ready, because this is one of those stories that hits different. This is not just another free agent signing, not just another press conference with the same tired cliches you have heard 1,000 times before. This is a grown man standing in front of cameras, getting a little choked up, admitting on record that the team he just signed with once passed him up as a kid growing up right in their own backyard. This is a story about pride, about a chip on the shoulder that has been building since childhood, and about a receiver who is walking back into his hometown with something to prove all over again. We are talking about Stefon Diggs, and his first day speaking to reporters as a member of the Washington Commanders was an absolute roller coaster of emotion, confidence, humility, and a little bit of fire. So stick around, because by the time this video is over, you are going to understand exactly why this signing means so much more than just adding another name to the roster. Let's start with the basics, because the way this whole thing came together is a story in itself. Diggs made it crystal clear from the very first moment he sat down with reporters that this decision was never really about football logistics or contract numbers alone. It was about family. It was about home. He openly said that his family is here, his entire support system is here, and that he simply loves everything about being back where he started. And here is the thing about veteran players who have been through it all. Guys who have bounced from franchise to franchise, chased championships, dealt with trades, dealt with the business side of this brutal sport. When a guy like that says he chose a team because of home, you better believe there is real weight behind those words. On top of that personal connection, Diggs praised the organization itself, saying they take care of their players, and he even mentioned having some pre-existing relationships with guys who came out of Houston with him, giving him a built-in comfort level walking into a brand new locker room. But let's be honest, the moment that really got people talking was when Diggs opened up about growing up as a die-hard hometown football fan, and the sting he carried for years because his own childhood team never gave him a shot. Picture this, a young kid from Maryland, playing football for teams with names like the Montgomery Village Chiefs, the Alexandria Raiders, bouncing around local programs, White Oak, Envy, grinding his way up through the ranks the same way thousands of hopeful young athletes do every single year. And that entire time, his family was loyal to the burgundy and gold. Diggs admitted his side of the family, along with essentially his whole household growing up, bled for that hometown team. While his father's side of the family were rival fans, setting up what he laughingly described as some seriously tense Thanksgiving dinners. And yet, despite growing up right in that team's own backyard, despite being a local kid with local talent, that opportunity never came. Diggs was blunt about it. He said he always felt like they passed him up, like they never gave him a real chance, even though he was right there the entire time. Now fast forward through years of a decorated, productive NFL career, years of proving doubters wrong with other franchises, and Diggs finally finds himself putting on that very uniform he used to dream about as a kid. He described the moment in almost spiritual terms, saying it felt like a full circle moment, like watching God work in mysterious ways, because timing truly is everything in this sport and in life. He talked about how back in the day, whenever he played against this franchise with a different team, he always played with an enormous chip on his shoulder, treating those matchups like personal statement games because deep down, this was still his team, the one that never called his name. And now, here is the twist that makes this whole story so compelling for anyone watching. That chip has not disappeared just because he signed the contract. In his own words, that chip is still there, it just switched sides. Now, instead of using that fire to torch this franchise from the opposing sideline, he is bringing that same intensity to fuel his own team from within. Diggs also opened up about what it genuinely means to him to play in front of a hometown crowd for the very first time as a member of this franchise. He described it as a completely different level of pride, something that goes beyond just another Sunday at the office. He talked about the deep sense of responsibility he feels, wanting to make his city proud, wanting to be a positive representation of where he came from, and he made it clear that the best way he knows how to do that is simply to go far. To help this team accomplish something special, though true to his cautious, superstition-respecting nature, he refused to put an exact ceiling on what that success might look like, joking that he did not want to jinx anything this early in the process. Now let's talk about where this team actually stands right now, because context matters here. This franchise made a genuinely stunning playoff run recently, coming up just one game short of reaching the Super Bowl, and then followed that up by actually making it to the big game the very next season. So this is not some rebuilding, bottom-of-the-barrel roster desperate for any warm body they can find. This is a legitimately talented, ascending football team that believes it has serious championship aspirations, and Diggs walked straight into that opportunity. When reporters asked him directly whether he sees himself as the missing piece that could finally push this franchise over the top, Diggs handled the question with real humility. He said he did not want to put that kind of label on himself, that he would rather simply go out and do his job at a high level, be a reliable target, get open, lead by example, and push the players around him to become the best versions of themselves. He specifically mentioned that his biggest personal philosophy is elevating his teammates, and he emphasized that even on day one, conversations were already flowing naturally in the locker room. Guys coming up to him, picking his brain, and him dropping little nuggets of wisdom here and there. And speaking of teammates, Diggs did not hold back his admiration for the young star quarterback he is now catching passes from. He was extremely complimentary, calling him a superstar in the making and saying he is genuinely excited to work with him, joking that he is quite familiar with talented young quarterbacks given his own extensive track record throughout his career. He also spoke glowingly about another veteran wide receiver on the roster, a player fans have nicknamed Scary Terry, revealing that even though the two of them were not personally close before this signing, Diggs had long admired his game from a distance, watching him rack up highlight reel plays on national television. Diggs specifically praised the intensity and passion this teammate plays with, noting that the two of them have already had conversations about how similar their competitive fire really is. Beyond that, Diggs offered a rundown of the pass-catching talent already in that receiver room, mentioning one wideout who has bounced around the league but is clearly flashing serious potential with the plays he has already made. Another established veteran target who spent time in Tennessee before arriving here, and even gave a shout-out to a promising young rookie, someone the locker room has affectionately just been calling by his jersey number since he has not quite earned a nickname. But Diggs made it clear this kid can genuinely play. Now let's talk about something that veteran leaders in this league rarely get enough credit for: mentoring young quarterbacks. Reporters specifically asked Diggs about his well-known reputation around the league for helping develop young signal callers, and he gave a genuinely thoughtful answer that revealed a lot about his character. He explained that his approach is rooted in open communication and transparency, deliberately avoiding an aggressive or overwhelming tone because, in his words, the game itself is already aggressive enough without a veteran piling on extra pressure. Instead, he talks to young quarterbacks brother to brother, checking in on how they are feeling mentally, encouraging them to communicate openly about what they are seeing on the field. He even dropped a genuinely catchy little phrase during the interview, saying communication rules the nation, which honestly might end up being the most quotable soundbite of his entire introductory press conference. But Diggs was clear that talk alone does not build a young quarterback's confidence. The real secret, according to him, is simply going out and making plays. Because every single time a receiver comes down with a difficult catch or wins a contested route, it plants a little bit of belief in that quarterback's mind, almost like putting a battery in his back, giving him the confidence to trust his arm and let it rip on the next opportunity. Now here comes the part of this story that is going to generate some serious headlines and debate across football social media. Because Diggs was directly confronted about a bold claim he made a few weeks earlier, a claim where he suggested he could be considered one of the very best wide receivers in the entire league. When pressed on whether he stands by that statement, Diggs did not back down, but he handled it with a fascinating blend of confidence and humility. He admitted that in his own heart, he genuinely believes he could rank himself as the single best receiver in football, though publicly he chooses to phrase it a bit more modestly out of respect for other talented players around the league. He explained that in this profession, confidence is not optional, it is essentially a requirement, because you cannot walk out onto that field second-guessing yourself against elite competition. But then Diggs backed up that bold belief with some genuinely compelling context. He pointed out that last season, he was reportedly ranked somewhere around the 14th best receiver in the league statistically, despite playing only around 52% of his team's offensive snaps, a remarkably efficient and productive workload for that level of production. He also reminded everyone of the massive obstacle he was working through at the time. Coming back from a significant ankle injury, something that historically sidelines players and saps their explosiveness for extended stretches, yet he managed to return to elite production remarkably quickly. Diggs made it clear he was not trying to disrespect anyone else in the conversation about the league's best receivers, acknowledging that personal opinions and favorite players will always factor into these debates, but he stood firmly behind the idea that his actual on-field production speaks for itself regardless of popularity contests or personal bias. Beyond the numbers and the accolades, Diggs also gave fans a genuinely fascinating look into exactly what makes him such a versatile and difficult matchup for opposing defenses. Throughout his career, he has been used all over the offensive formation, lining up outside, in the slot, even occasionally getting looks in the backfield. When asked what allows him to move around so effectively and why that versatility makes him harder to defend, Diggs gave a remarkably thoughtful answer that showed real football intelligence. He explained that his biggest commitment has always been to fully understanding the playbook and developing a deep chemistry with his quarterback, to the point where he tries to see the field exactly the way the quarterback sees it, rather than simply from his own individual perspective as a receiver. He pointed out that a quarterback is dealing with an enormous amount of information in real time, reading the offensive line, tracking running backs, processing coverage disguises, all while trying to stay upright against a relentless pass rush. So Diggs said his job is to think from that bird's eye view, putting himself in the right spot at the right time to make his quarterback's decision as easy and comfortable as possible. He emphasized that the surest way to consistently get the football in this league is by proving to your quarterback that you can be trusted in any spot on the field. Because if you can only be effective from one single position, defenses can simply shade extra coverage your way and take you out of the game plan. But when you can line up anywhere and still be a threat, you become nearly impossible to consistently double-team, especially playing alongside other talented playmakers who all demand defensive attention. Diggs also addressed the uncertainty of the free agency process itself, describing what it was like heading into this offseason without knowing exactly where he would ultimately land. He explained that while there was naturally some uncertainty, he and his camp had a general sense of direction and were intentionally patient, wanting to make sure any decision truly made sense for this stage of his career. He was refreshingly honest about his priorities at this point, stating plainly that he wants to win, and more specifically, he wants to hoist a championship trophy, and there was simply no better place to chase that dream than coming home. He described his mindset throughout the process using a phrase that genuinely stuck out, saying that gratitude eliminates entitlement, explaining that he approached this opportunity with humility and thankfulness rather than any sense of being owed anything. He also touched on the physical and mental preparation that defined his offseason regardless of where he would eventually sign. Diggs revealed that he trained multiple times a day throughout the process, refusing to let the uncertainty of his free agency situation slow down his preparation. He said his focus was never really on figuring out the where, but rather making sure that whenever the when finally arrived, His body and mind would already be ready to perform at an elite level from day one. That discipline, he explained, is exactly where his confidence on the field comes from. Knowing the amount of work he has already put in before ever stepping onto a practice field with his new teammates. Now, since this was technically his very first official day with the team, reporters naturally asked what he wants his brand new teammates to know about him, both as a football player and as a person. Diggs kept his answer refreshingly simple and grounded. He said above everything else, he considers himself a dog on the field, someone who genuinely loves this sport and everything that comes with it, and someone who simply wants to win. He specifically praised his new teammates for sharing that same competitive hunger, mentioning again how much he respects the passion and ball-player mentality already present in that locker room. But true to his stated personal philosophy, he made it clear that he would rather show that dedication through his actions on the field than simply talk about it in front of a microphone. Closing with a promise that he intends to be a positive, unifying presence in that locker room, someone who brings consistent energy and helps steer this talented roster in the right direction. So there you have it, football fans. A hometown kid who once felt overlooked by his own childhood team is now walking through that very locker room door wearing their colors, carrying a chip on his shoulder that has simply switched sides. A veteran receiver boldly claiming he belongs in the conversation for the very best in the entire league, backing it up with real production despite a serious injury setback. A proven mentor ready to pour wisdom into a rising young superstar quarterback. And a genuinely emotional, full-circle homecoming for a franchise that just fell one game short of the Super Bowl and then made it there the very next year. If this roster truly needed that final missing piece of veteran fire, leadership. And hometown pride, it might have just walked through the front door. So now it is your turn, and we genuinely want to know what you think. Do you believe Stefon Diggs truly is one of the best wide receivers in the entire league, or is that just supreme confidence talking? Do you think this hometown homecoming story ends with him finally lifting that championship trophy he has been chasing his entire career? And most importantly, does this signing convince you that this franchise is truly built to make a serious championship run this season? Drop your predictions and your honest opinions down in the comments section below, because this is exactly the kind of debate we love having with you all. If this video gave you even a little bit of those chills Diggs himself talked about, do us a favor and smash that like button. It genuinely makes a massive difference in helping this channel reach more passionate football fans just like yourself. And if you have not already done so, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we are going to be bringing you every single major storyline, every locker room moment, and every bit of inside access as this incredible season unfolds. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you in the very next video.